Comics with Comics Wellspring.
Hello, welcome. It's Monday night, so it's Inspired Inc. We get to hang out, talk about craft, talk with a great creator. And you guys have heard me on the show so much talk about certain things that's going to come up on the show. I've told you all to go listen to You Are a Storyteller podcast, told you all about Invisible Ink. I mention the term armature quite often. And even when, and I do give this person credit when I bring them up all the time. And even in the sense of, what does storytelling mean? And I always just say, it's survival information. And this is the person I learned it from. So I'm excited to pick his brain, to have a chat. One of my biggest influences, and I'm going to just, kind of give him some prod here. So Brian McDonald, thank you so much for being on the show. How are you today? Great to meet you.
I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show, Brandon. It's just very nice to be asked to be on the show. So thank you.
Of course. It's one of those cool things. I've been one of your students indirectly for a number of years now. Your podcast carried me through pretty much COVID in general. And throughout college at that point when I was kind of finishing up my degree. And I'm so picky about podcasts, especially because I do podcasts. Is what I've been doing for 5 or so years. And I'm always trying to find a podcast that gives me good information, that inspires me, that pushes me, and that kind of delivers on just like crucial aspects that would actually benefit me as a creator. And You Are a Storyteller was it. Also with your new podcast as well, which is kind of piggybacking off of You're a Storyteller. I'm excited to talk about that evolution in general. But you've done so much with craft, and I don't think a lot of people kind of appreciate your knowledge of craft enough, because I feel like you should be mentioned in everything everywhere, because I'm like that. But why don't you tell us about what exactly it is you do, and why storytelling in general? When did that come about?
Okay. So when did I get interested in storytelling?
When did that click to be like, this is what I need to pursue?
Well, it's a weird thing, because you know how like every kid draws, you know what I mean? And then they fall off, they stop drawing at a certain point, or some people keep doing it. So when you ask an artist, when did you start drawing? It's like, well, I always drew, right? It's the same for everybody. It's just that most people stop. Stories were fascinating to me as a kid, and they are to all kids, only I never stopped. Right. So it goes back to, when you first start hearing stories. So they just fascinated me. But the other thing was, it came linked to film. So my interest in film and storytelling came linked together. And then later, when I was a teenager, comic books came in. But before that, it was really film and stories sort of linked. They could be separate, they could be apart, but film was really the thing. And so when I started making films, trying to make 8mm films when I was a kid, it was cheaper to buy paper than film. So writing the script and getting it right became very important to me, because I didn't have money to be burning film like that. So that became part of it. Also, when I was growing up, I was coming up in the 70s, and writer directors were the big thing then. They hadn't necessarily been a big thing before that. There were some writer directors, but a lot of directors didn't write at all. But when I was coming up, you'd hear about Coppola and Spielberg and Lucas, and everybody wrote and directed. So I thought you had to. And even though I had dyslexia and didn't think I could do it, I was like, well, I'm going to be a filmmaker. I have to do it. So I just powered through.
Oh, dude, that's one of those things. I think you're exactly right. Just picking it up when you're young, and then just realizing like, this is what you're drawn to in this part of the film or television or comics in general. You kind of knew what gripped you right away, it is rare. And I think storytelling and writing is one of those things that doesn't really hit a lot of people until a little bit later on. Drawing is always the first thing they kind of latch onto. And so you kind of got to move on and like do all these great things. You worked on, what was it, Return of the Living Dead, part 2 or part 1 as well.
I did not work on part 1, but I did work on part 2. Yeah, I've never watched it, by the way.
Oh, really? Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah, I've never watched it. But maybe I saw a screening. I think I saw a screening when it was first finished. I think I saw Yeah, but I've never actually watched. I don't remember it. I remember the stuff we made, but
Oh,
I don't.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I remember about that. But I worked on a lot of creature stuff. My roommate was a special effects makeup artist,
Mhm.
and so when I first moved to LA, and I just got worked with him, and because I worked with him, I got to work with other people, and so I was sort of in that world almost by accident. But yeah.
So when did you connect the idea of the armature in storytelling to what you were doing with some of those monster creatures and whatnot?
So, well, yeah, the armature idea came from a sculptor talking to me about, they would make these maquettes of whatever the creature was in the movie and show it to the producer or director, these little, miniatures of whatever the monster was. And I was asking them about it's amazing to get to watch sculptors work. I had never really seen a lot of sculptors working, and it was amazing. I don't know how they do it. I still don't know how they do it. I should have taken advantage of where I was at that moment. I didn't, because I wanted to be writing and directing, and I was just angry instead of like, what? I should be a student while I'm here. I didn't do that, but I did ask about this sculpture they were making. Somebody was making, and there was a wireframe sort of skeleton they would make. And I said, well, why do you make that first? And they said, well, because clay can't support its own weight, so it'll collapse after a couple of hours or a couple of days. And so you have to build this armature. And I thought, oh, the armature is real, and that wire is called armature wire. The armature is really important to the sculpture. Nobody notices it, but it holds everything up. It supports everything. And I thought, well, stories have the same thing. They have a thing at its center that supports everything, that shapes everything. People don't notice it, but it's one of the most important parts of the story.
And I mean, can you explain to the audience what the concept of an armature is in storytelling as well?
Mm-hmm. So in storytelling, an armature is your point. So the point you're making, and it should be something, a sentence. So a lot of people would say theme, right? The theme of the story, but people have a lot of definitions for theme, and so it gets confusing. So armature is a way to talk about it in its way. You can say theme if you want to. So it's what the whole point of the thing is. So if you want to say that revenge harms the avenger, right? If you want to say that, let's say that's your story. Well, everything you do in the story has to prove that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what everything exists for, right? So and it helps you make decisions. It helps you make all of the decisions. So what you're doing is you're taking an infinite number of choices. When you have a story, you have an infinite number of choices. You can do anything. That's a problem. You want to get to a finite number of choices. And once you decide it's almost like, there was a show, I think it was one of Gordon Ramsay's shows, where sometimes they would send people into a pantry to grab any ingredients they wanted, right? It's okay, go, and they'd go in and they'd have 3 minutes or whatever to grab whatever ingredients. Well, if you're doing that, if you have all the ingredients are sort of agnostic. They don't care what it doesn't matter. But you have to decide what you're going to make, right?
Yeah.
That's how you know what to grab. So you're like,
can't just grab every single thing off of there. It would make no sense.
Right. So what you do is you say, I'm going to make a lasagna. So then you grab the things you're going to need for lasagna, right? You don't grab anything else. It takes that infinite number of choices, gets it down to a finite number of choices. That's what an armature does. It's the same thing.
Yeah, you're not going to grab pad thai noodles for, lasagna and spaghetti and whatnot. So
right.
it's got to be specific.
Yeah, but you can be overwhelmed by all the choices. And stories do that. You can be overwhelmed by all the choices. And so what happens is, the way I put it is that you start asking yourself, instead of, most people ask themselves, well, what could happen in this story? What could? That's not the question. That's not the question you should be answering is, what should happen in this story? Those are the ingredients I'm talking about. What do I need? Well, I'm going to need mozzarella cheese. I'm going to need this. I'm going to need tomatoes. I'm going to need basil. I'm going to need, right? And so what happens is you're not making decisions. You're making discoveries if you're doing it right. So you can't have anything you want in a story. It doesn't make it's just like a recipe.
And you made the one thing I remember the most that, like, where armature just clicked, is that you were talking about Shawshank Redemption. and how it was, get busy living or get busy dying, and the scene with Red and the older guy, and how they kind of balanced each other out by showing, what one did in one essence and what one did with the other. And
Yeah.
just finding that way to make it click when you're studying comics or novels or, film and whatnot. You could kind of do that with everything. And I went on a big MASH obsession after listening to the show for, a number
Oh,
of years.
really?
And yeah, so I and Mike drives my girlfriend crazy because I get her to watch MASH now too. It's awesome. But like MASH and Columbo, you could watch it and then start to dissect and be like, oh, this is what they're trying to say in this episode, and it just makes such a big impact because then all the jokes circle around back to that. All of like the wittiness, everything goes back to exemplify that point, and I feel like that's missing in a lot of modern content now. And
Absolutely.
Netflix shows like get spat out super fast. All this stuff that kind of just gets roto-turned and just, vomited out. Star Wars sequels, I'll say that. And stuff like that. It just feels like it's just vomited out. And there's definitely scenes. There's definitely a thing that's happening, but there's no real like point behind it. And you're just like, oh, well, you just thought of a bunch of cool stuff and slapped it together. That's fun. You could do that. That is storytelling in a sense, but you're not really giving something for someone to take away and learn from it. And
I don't think it's storytelling.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. It's
I think
what makes it missing?
Well, there's a whole thing. I have a whole thing about the way TV is done now, which if you're younger, it's hard for people to understand. But TV didn't always, I call it TV, streaming.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah. It's different than it's ever really been done, certainly on this scale. And so for one thing, if you look at any streaming series, almost every single one, people get caught up in it. They think it's fantastic. They think it's great. They're telling me it's the best thing in the world. And I watch it and I'm not that impressed. But what's interesting is that, forget that I'm not impressed. Forget it. Doesn't matter. I'm just a, old guy who has all these rules and right. But when they get to the last show or the last season, they'll often say, what happened? This show doesn't work anymore. They lost it in the last season. They lost it in the last show. They're almost always, like 98% of the time, they're disappointed. You know why? Because all they were doing the entire time was getting you to watch the next episode. They didn't have an armature they were going towards. So they don't have an ending planned. That's why it feels weird, because they just had to wrap everything up because they weren't going anywhere.
Yeah, that hits. I mean, people could fight me about this, but like Stranger Things is probably the biggest example I could think of where it just missed it completely. And I was trying to be like, where's this going? Where's this going? This is going somewhere. And then it ended, and I was like, okay, that didn't do anything. Like
there's so many shows like that, right? Whatever people think about Stranger Things, I'm sure they can think of their own example, right? People felt that way about Game of Thrones. People felt that way. Like there's so many shows like that. So it's I have a theory about why streaming shows work. I don't think they actually work. So, but I think I believe that we are in an addiction economy, not an attention economy. That's what everybody says, attention economy. It's not about attention. It's about addiction. How can we get people addicted to their phone? How can we get them addicted to this game? How do we get them addicted to these snacks? How do we get them addicted to, right? It's all about addiction. And the way addiction works, the way you hijack somebody's brain, or one of the stronger ways to do it, is intermittent reward. This will work on rats. It'll work on anything. So what happens is, and this is the way slot machines work in Vegas. So what happens is, all they have to do, and stories are about their conclusion. That's the only reason to tell a story, to get to the point, right? If you hold that point back, I'll give you something. Here's some, oh, this is interesting. Oh, that's exciting, blah, blah, blah. And then I don't give you a resolution. Well, what are you going to do? Well, I'll watch the next one because maybe I'll get satisfied. I'll watch the next one, so maybe I'll get satisfied. I'll watch the next one. And so it's the same. It's potato chips. It's the same thing, right? They're empty calories, but you're like, this is delicious. It's like, well, you think it's delicious, but actually you're getting nothing.
That's true.
Right?
It's like when they're just like, oh, just get past season 1. You just got to get past the first season, and then the rest is great. And I'm like, well, if the first act of a movie isn't going to grip me, then I doubt the rest of the movie is going to grip me, and I doubt the ending is going to pay off if the first act is not hitting it at all.
Right, right. That makes me mad because all I think is, so you mean somebody got paid to learn how to do their job for a season? Like, it's like
That's very
what
true.
it says to me. So yeah, so I think that's so in the old days, there was, and you see this, you know what, you see it with what's the name of that show? That's The Last of Us.
Oh,
This is a really good example of what I'm talking about. Now, I didn't see the second season. I haven't seen the second season.
Same. I didn't even finish the first. I didn't see the last episode.
Okay. So here's what's interesting to me, though, about that show. So going back to the old days of TV when I was growing up and things like MASH and all those things were on, every episode was self-contained, right? And it was a meal. It didn't stop people from watching the next week, by the way. They would tune in and watch the next one, right? But they would get a meal, something you could chew on. There was a point, there was a reason, you got a whole story, right? And so that's a different feeling. And what's interesting is there was an episode of The Last of Us that was a love story that was a complete episode. And everybody said it was self-contained. And everybody was, that's the best one. And they thought it was because of what it was about and all these things. It's like, no, it knew what it was, and it contained it, and it gave it to you, right? And so that's the secret sauce that nobody's tapping into anymore because it's an addiction economy.
You know, that kind of relates a lot to comics too, in a big way. You know,
Oh,
I
yeah.
feel older Silver Age, Golden Age comics, even entering, I guess it kind of stopped maybe more in the like 80s, 90s, but you would get a one-shot adventure. You could pick up, Stan Lee always said, it could be anybody's first comic.
Yes.
So write it so if it's the first thing they're picking up, they could enjoy it. And now it's hard. It's almost you have to convince people to read comics because they're like, I'm confused on the lore and the history. What run do I read? Where do I start? It's a 100-issue run. I don't know if I'm going to do that. It gets intimidating. That accessibility gets taken away, and
It's
it makes
ridiculous.
it difficult.
It's a bad business model, right? Because what it means, I used to read a ton of comics, right? When I was a teenager, I read tons of comics. If I want to pick up an issue of the X-Men right now, I will have no idea what's happening. So I can't buy one. They basically said, we don't care if you ever buy another comic book, right? Instead of like, there's a thing that Jack Kirby used to do when he was doing the Fantastic Four or something. It was great. So if you pick up an issue of the Fantastic Four that Jack Kirby did, within a page or two, usually the first page, you will see the Fantastic Four using all of their powers so you know who they are. So it'll be like the Thing will be holding up some huge piece of equipment, and Reed Richards will be stretching to work on it, and Sue will be doing something with it, and that Johnny will be like welding something with this fire, like and so you go, if you've never seen one, you go, oh, these are their powers, right? And the whole thing is like that, and they tell you, they bring you along, and I find that nobody is willing to bring you along anymore.
Everything's in arcs, everything's in 6 issues. You gotta, and sometimes you just go to the shop, you're like, this cover looks cool, but it's issue 3. I'm just gonna wait. Like, you just put it back.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know why that happened. I think it can sell books, but it also makes it impossible for new people to come in.
Yeah.
Or old people to come back. Right.
Actually, in the comments here, that's what made Twilight Zone series a great of self-contained stories. 100%. That's I mean, that's another. I mean, Sterling was brilliant with that. Some of his books and novels were in that same capacity too, where you could get a full story out of that as well. I wanted to see what our dude Phil Rod here says. I have screened this. I've screamed about this in Big Two Comics for years. It shuts people out, except the people who have been reading for 40 years, and then they complain they can't get new readers, and they're doing the same thing with movies. Oh, 100%.
Absolutely.
And when you have to watch 3 shows and 7 movies to find out what's happening in the next one, you're like, that's, again, accessibility. That's hard. It makes it more difficult. You're kind of gatekeeping almost, of making it easy for someone to understand just this one film that they're trying to see.
I remember I think it was Iron Man 3, and they kept talking about something like like what happened in New York. Now, look, I I don't remember what they were talking about. So I didn't know what they were talking about. And they never did what people used to do was, well, we have to make sure that people know if they don't remember or they don't. It's like this. I'm not thinking about this movie when I'm not watching it. It's not that good. So I'm not going to be thinking about it when I'm not watching it. Right. So, so you have to remind me, you have to catch me up. Also, it's dumb because, not everybody who goes to those movies are fans of those movies. They go on a date, they bring their kids, they whatever, right? There's all kinds of other, it's like, why don't you let them in? They're there, right? Right.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity to get a fan instead of a person that goes, I don't know, who is this? What happened? What are they talking about? Like, you're all in your head. You can't get emotionally involved because you're in your head. It's a dumb way to make movies. I don't know what happened.
And so, going back into the even comics and comic creation at that point too, you've actually put out a couple books and you've worked on a couple series in general. You did the Lost in Space series, which is crazy because I did not know that was you until I was doing some research, and then I found out, and I'd had that graphic novel in my collection since I was a kid because I loved that movie as a kid. Yeah, and I found a random single issue in like a $1 box, like a year or so ago, and I was like, oh, cool, it's Lost in Space. Like, I'm gonna take this out. I'm gonna check it out again. And then I was doing my research, and you did that as well, which was I guess I've been following you subconsciously longer than you. But you also did Old Souls and Land of the Dead, and Hardwire too, I believe.
Hardware and
Hardware, yeah, and Predator.
Predator.
I haven't read the Predator stuff. I've read all the other stuff so far, though.
So you read the Ape Sapien. You read the
that one's great.
Lost in Space was a weird job. Lost in Space was a weird gig. I kind of got it in a weird roundabout political way. And when I got the job, it was already late. Oh, wow. When they said, hey, you do this, what do you want it? 3 weeks ago. And so my job was to read the script. The movie hadn't come out yet, and write a sequel to that movie, but in comic book form. So that was my job. But even though it was late, they kept rejecting all my ideas. And they rejected an idea that I really loved that years later became an episode of Futurama, not by me, but it was exactly the same story.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm like, no, they rejected it's Futurama. So yeah.
And I mean, you've kind of had a hard road breaking into comics in general. It hasn't been easy for you, just from the history I've heard and like listened to on the shows and everything. But I feel like you've had like some of the best opportunities that just weren't given to you for some reason, and it just doesn't make sense to me, especially with credentials and with skill level. And it brings me like to the like finding success isn't so much and I'm great at what I do. A lot of it's luck, to be honest.
A lot of
or other factors at play too. But what do you think has kept you from entering like the bigger sphere of comics? Because I know it's always been a passion of yours.
Well, okay. So when I started trying to get into comics, it was 1987. And there were, and you can look at the stats, there was almost no one, especially writers, who looked like me who was writing comics. No one. Dwayne McDuffie, and he was it, right?
Yeah, at that era, yeah.
And maybe a couple people, and for a long time. And even now, if you look, like I remember Dwayne called me once because I had worked with him and done hardware in an issue of Static, which later became Static Shock. And he called me about something one time, and he's dead now, Dwayne, but he called me one time and I was working on something. I was doing something for Dark Horse. I think I was doing Predator or something. And he said, oh, you're working. And I said, yeah. And he goes, oh, you're the one. Because it was always one at a time in the whole industry. That's the way the industry worked. And now I think maybe it's 3 at a time. So yeah.
Has it gotten much better? Like there's no, there's no title with where the character is African American at all. There's none. Like there were the main book, unless it's, maybe Static Shock or
but
Black Panther, you know what I mean? Even at that, like,
yeah,
you're just like,
but
where
even that.
are
But here's what's interesting to me about that. For instance, I honestly believe that the X-Men should be written primarily by marginalized groups, by marginalized people, because what they can bring to it is a subtlety of experience, right? Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a Black person. It can be anybody. It could be somebody in a wheelchair. It can be, right? Any marginalized person is going to bring a particular flavor that is going to have an authenticity, right? And so there is something. Also, there's just the human part of it. Like, I don't necessarily want to write Black Panther. Maybe I want to write Spider-Man, And the thing is, I could write Spider-Man. There's nothing about Spider-Man that is that anything except human, right? I was, you know what I mean? So it's weird when it's like, hey, you want to write this? It's like, well, I could write anything. I have all the other human experiences too. I'm not just a Black guy. I also have other experiences that all humans have, right? So I could write about those things. So it's really, that was hard. That stuff was hard. And really, I did get to a point where I wouldn't even go to a comic book shop anymore, because I was like, none of these. I mean, I tried hard to break in. And I went to the Comic-Con in San Diego every year for 13 years. And I had proposals that were slick proposals. I had a proposal once that I won't say what company, but they didn't buy any of the stories in this proposal. But for years, they showed that proposal to people. This is what a proposal package should look like. Because I mentioned it to an editor and he said, "Oh, you did that? We show that to everybody."
Wow.
Yeah.
No credit, no payout, no,
No.
they're not going to take the script, but we'd love to use this more.
Yeah.
And T'Challa, come on, dude. My cat's name's T'Challa.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, random story. We discovered each other as he tried to almost die in front of a bunch of cars.
Oh, wow.
When we rescued him, grabbed him, I was Googling, like, what do I do with a stray cat that I rescued? And it was Jack Kirby's birthday. But also when I was pulling out my phone, I had found out that Chadwick Boseman had just passed away a few hours before. And so, like, then I had this, like, random black cat. It's Jack Kirby's birthday. Chadwick had just passed. I'm like, dude, T'Challa, you are, and he is definitely the king of the house.
Well, that's cool. That's cool.
But so what, trying to, like, just break in and move through and kind of getting stuck and rejected, you still kept, like, a passion within you and you still kept going. A lot of people will just stop, once they hit a wall with a certain profession of some sort and be like, this is it, I'm just not going to make it. What helped you, one, enjoy comics again, but also just, like, keep going and trying other things to find success?
I don't know if I ever got to the point with comics. I mean, I will enjoy individual comics and certainly things that my friends have done that I like, and other people like I enjoy, but comics as a thing, like, out of habit now I do go to comic book shops occasionally, but it's completely out of habit because I can't buy anything, right? So I was like, so I was like, oh, well, that looks cool. It's too bad I won't know what's going on, and so it just sits there on the shelf. So I don't know if that passion has returned to the same level it was once at. Part of that is youth. Youth has a kind of passion that that fades over time. That's part of it. But also, there's just nothing for me. They're not interested if I pick up a new issue of what's Superman up to. Like, I can't do that, right?
Yeah.
So, but I kept going because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know how to stop. I think if I had known how to stop, I would have stopped. I really didn't know how to stop, and I had spent my entire life wanting to do very specific things and nothing else. And so, people don't believe me, but I can't do things. I can't do anything. Like, I can the narrow band of things I can direct. I can get pretty good performances from people. I know how to do that. I can write a script. I can I can speak in front of people. I have that ability, and I can teach. I can't do anything else. And I can't teach anything. I have to teach the thing I know. So it's kind of a narrow band. I mean, I can write, stuff I wrote, some books and stuff I've written, but I can't do that much. So the stuff I can do isn't really applicable very often to things outside of the, what I do. I used to work with soldiers with PTSD. It was a thing called the Red Badge Project. And it was started by a guy named Evan Bailey and Tom Skerritt, who the actor. Yeah. And Tom, so Tom called me and asked me if I wanted to do this thing. I knew Tom a little bit, but I didn't know him very well. But I know him now, but I didn't know him very. But it's like, oh, when a movie star calls me and asks me to do stuff, I say yes. So that's what happened. And so I got sort of drafted to the Red Badge, which ended up being really rewarding. But telling them how to tell stories. Oh, I forgot why I mentioned the Red Badge. What were we talking about before I lost?
I got so involved with that too. I'm spacing out now. You were leading into that for. What did I just ask you? I got so excited for that.
I don't know. Whatever. So
yeah.
Anyway,
keep going.
I did that. So
oh yeah, fine. You don't have a lot of capabilities. You were just doing this. Yeah, my bad.
So
sorry.
What the thing is about the people who had been in the military is that a lot of their skills were not applicable outside the military. So they could I know how to run a radar thing. Like you don't have so it's this weird thing where they have to learn how to market what they can do right into the civilian world, and it feels a little like that. Like what I do, unless somebody's really savvy and can figure out, like the marketing places I've worked with and, creative agencies and stuff where they like, oh, we need, to find an armature for this product or for this thing. But most people don't know how to apply that stuff. And in fact, I think that the studios could use, when I was chief storyteller at Belief Agency, I didn't know why studios didn't have such a job.
Yeah.
Right? Like there should be somebody who's the story expert, and they don't have people like that.
You would think even in comics, you have an editor, but the editor shouldn't have to have the entire continuity of everything in existence to make sure books are like making sense and whatnot either. Like you kind of need someone who just keeps stuff on track, because then you have someone wearing, I think that's probably an issue with nowadays where everyone has to wear 10 hats. I wanted to be a writer, so I started a podcast so I could network, and then I started learning how to draw because I wanted to put out a comic, so I tried to draw, and then I try to market, and I try to do this and this, and you're wearing 20 hats, from marketeer to editor-in-chief to writer to developer to production to designer, all this stuff, and you're like, it's hard to hone in on one craft now. And I think that's a way of the day that we live in nowadays as well, of just being a creator. But I think it's so awesome that you kind of knew, this is what I'm good at, and this is what I'm going to pursue, because that's the only way I'm going to find success, and also put like food on the table, and finding avenues where that worked as well.
Yeah, I wish I could say that it was like that. It wasn't like that. It was more like, I can't explain it other than it's the closest thing that I've ever had to a calling. Like, oh, you're supposed to be doing this. And as much as I wanted to make money doing it, that hasn't always been true. As much as I want, it sort of, I heard somebody describe the word passion one time, and they said what it actually means is suffering. That's what it actually means. And they said, so your passion is the thing you don't mind suffering for. And I would say that's what it was for me.
Yeah, that hits too. And I'm sure a lot of creators that resonates with too. And it kind of makes up the definition. I mean, you talk a lot about definitions too, which was made me open my eyes to a lot. But like putting it that way, you're kind of like, oh wow, is it going to be worth it to do this then? If I'm not ready to kind of sacrifice and suffer through some moments, and if you can't, then this probably isn't meant for you.
Right.
That's the thing about it too.
Right. But artists often have it, right? Dancers and actors, and they often have this, right? And actors go through a lot of rejection and a lot of, they work really hard, and but it's there's something in you that says you have to do it. And it's not it's not about money or success or fame or some other thing. There are people who are driven by those things, but they often end up not being very good at the thing. They're just good at getting the attention, for doing the thing. And that's okay for them. That's fine. They just want to be famous. Okay. But people who want to act, that's a whole different thing.
Because then you're even able to take on gigs and opportunities that it doesn't mean you're going to get money on the table and do all this, but it's a good opportunity that you would enjoy doing in that sense too. So,
right.
Especially with the opportunities you've had with Pixar, you've had with Disney, and then you worked with Belief Agency for a number of years. And that's where you did marketing and your podcast as well. You are a storyteller.
Right.
Where did that kind of start and end for you to start this new podcast?
Oh, well, so what happened was, the reason I was at Belief Agency is because Jesse Bryan, who was the CEO and one of the founders, he found that he had a hard time. Like, they made all these documentaries and things for big clients like Microsoft and Amazon and whatever. And so what happened was Jesse would sometimes do a campaign or a spot that worked really well, performed really high. And then the next one, maybe not so much. And he didn't know why. He didn't know how to be consistent. And so I was teaching a class at a community college. And I was really working for the film school, which was a film school in Seattle that was called the Film School. So when I say the film school, like, which one? The film school. So anyway, in fact, Tom Skerritt was there at the film school. And so was my friend, Stuart Stern, who wrote Rebel Without a Cause. He was also one of the founders of the film school. Anyway, so they had a deal with a community college, and I was teaching at this community college. And Jesse ended up, I don't know how he heard about the class, but he ended up taking the class at that college. And he then realized, oh, this is how you have consistency, having an armature, all those things. So he figured out how to have, so he kept taking the class. He took the class 6 times, I think. And then it became a requirement of everybody who worked at Belief had to take my class. So I started to know people at this agency, and I started to know Jesse. And I went in to visit one day to the agency, and he goes, well, why don't you just work here? So, and he goes, you'll be the chief storyteller, and you'll just keep us on track. And so that's what I did. I had an office, and people came in. They're like, we're working on this. Is the story working? No, maybe you want to do this. I can't find an armature. Well, maybe you want to do that. And then I would help shape it. And what I really got to see, it was really great for me to be able to see a company where people had all these disjointed sort of ideas and opinions and everything, and start to get focused. So when we were working on a piece, cutting a documentary or something, somebody could say, egos were out of it. So somebody would say, is that shot helping us with the armature? And people could say, I don't think it is. And we could cut it. And nobody's ego, everybody was doing the same thing. We're all pulling in the same direction. We got faster and we got better. We had people studying, how are they doing? They have no idea how we could be so consistent. No one. Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. And so I got to see how well that worked with the team. And then on Fridays, every Friday I taught class to the company. So Friday afternoon, the whole company, Jesse would teach the history of advertising, and we would alternate. So he would teach the history of advertising, which was fascinating. And then he would do that for a few weeks, and then I would do storytelling. And that's how we did it. But everybody in the company was really supposed to be an expert in storytelling and how it worked. And we could all use the language, and we had this shorthand, and it was great to be able to take ego out of it. It had a way of taking ego out of it. It wasn't about us. It was about the armature. So anyway, Jesse one day said, well, why don't we have a podcast? Why don't we just have a podcast? So we had the studio. We went in the studio and did the first one. It was kind of impromptu. We just did it. And that first one ended up winning an award. and which was cool. Um,
I think I've
uh,
heard that first episode 20 plus times at this point. It's just ingrained in me. Because it's just so informative. And as a creator, when you're trying to understand a concept like storytelling, where sometimes there's tons of books on it, there's tons of, and I have stacks of how to write books and everything, but nothing has clicked for me in terms of writing a good story than Armature
mhm.
was just like, it's better than Theme. Like you said, it just gives you that north star to be like, is this too radical? Would this really happen? Well, can we relate it to this? Well, you could be radical and be crazy as long as it points back to that in a big
Right,
sense, and it
right.
helps.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It does help. And so anyway, so we did that for a while, however long that ran. And then Jesse and I ended up leaving that company.
Oh,
And when we left the company had they had all the hard drives with all the shows on them. So the show was not available for a while.
yeah.
And I decided that I wanted to start the show up again. But this time I rebranded it and called it something else, but it's essentially in a way the same show. There was a spin-off show because there were right, there was You Are a Storyteller and there was You Are a Storyteller Masters of the Craft.
Yeah.
You Are a Storyteller is me talking about story stuff, being interviewed by Jesse. Masters of the Craft is me talking to other people who I think have mastered their craft in some way. And so it's a creative conversation, a lot like this, just a conversation between creatives. And so I was able to bring that back. And I have archive editions of the old show as the new show. So it alternates usually. One week it's an old show, next week it's a new show. Old show, new show, old show, new show. So that's the way we're doing it. But I was able to get some of those shows back. All of the shows that had been up, I got back. The shows that were never cut, I still don't have. So there were shows that we shot that never got cut. So I have to find a way to get that hard drive, which has been a little bit of a thing. So, but
Yeah.
there's some cool people that are on those that I hope get to see the light of day.
I bet, because I mean, once you broke out with that Frank Oz episode, and that one was just like, this is it. It opened my eyes to so much. Every episode is so insightful, and I ripped off everything you did completely. Like the conversation show, Masters of the Craft, where I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna bring on indie artists so I could talk about ways to inspire other creatives. And this whole show was based on when the highs and lows of being a creator, basically, because we all hit those lows where it's just like, I don't know if I'm gonna get out of this rut. But listening to other people's experiences, like I would listen to what you would do on the show, it would kind of get me out of that rut whenever I felt stuck. So this show was meant to get creators out of a rut, give them some insight, give them something to look into, or also just be like, oh, they're going through the same thing I'm going through. That's insane. Like it makes me feel better about stuff. And
Yeah,
as
that's it.
creators, we kind of need that.
Oh yeah, I remember. I read an interview with James Cameron, and this was years and years ago. And I read this interview with him, and he said, "Well, if I'm writing, I have to do all these other things." He goes, "I have to rearrange all the books on my bookshelves, and I have to do all this thing." And I thought, at the time, in my mind, he was essentially Terminator, Aliens, T2. He was that guy.
Yeah.
And I just went, that guy is afraid to sit down and write? Like, oh, okay, then I'm fine. Like, like
Yeah.
I do that too. I guess that's okay. So it was nice to know that somebody at that level was going through the same thing. Yeah, that's really invaluable information because you can think that it's just you and you're not doing it right. You don't have the confidence and you don't, right? But when you hear somebody who has conquered the world, essentially king of the world, right? Like James Cameron, and he's having the same struggles, that's invaluable.
Yeah, it really kind of puts things in perspective, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier. And we've talked about this so much on the show when it comes to just writing other characters outside of your community, is that we're all human. Like, well, no matter what, we are all human, having human experiences. And if you channel that, everything becomes a bit more clear. And you could write about different characters, you could understand people a bit better. It's
Mm-hmm.
just going back to that human level overall.
Yeah.
And so, you do another great concept that you actually wrote a book on, and that's the golden theme.
Uh-huh.
And the golden theme I always thought was very captivating. Do you want to explain it just a little bit for our audience as well?
Yeah. The Golden Theme is actually a book I'm thinking about revisiting
Ooh.
and another edition of it because there are some things I didn't talk about in that book that I think people think I ignored, but I just left them out. And I need to go back and address them so that people know that I know. So anyway, so the deal was, um, Einstein was trying to figure. So we'll start with Einstein. So Einstein was trying to figure out how to find a unifying math for basically Newtonian sort of math and physics and for quantum because they have different systems and they don't seem to be able to like wait, you can't use this to calculate anything in this and you can't, right? And Einstein thought there's got to be something that connects them. There's something universal here. There's something underneath that has to connect them. He never found it, but that's what he's looking for. But I was looking for the same thing in story. I was looking for every story has an armature, but I thought stories must have something in common. There's something that they all have in common, and I need to figure out what that is. And I thought about it for a long, long time, and for years. As a matter of fact, one of the things that got me, it was sort of two ideas came together. So I was with a friend of mine, and we were walking through a cemetery. We were working on something and we took a walk, and it's a cemetery near where I lived. And so we took a walk and we went through there. It's a cemetery where Bruce Lee is. And yeah, and now my mom is there, and I got her as close to Bruce as possible because she loved Bruce Lee. So I'm like, how close can I get her to Bruce Lee?
Where's my heart?
So anyway, we were walking through that cemetery, and I said, his name's Brian, and I said, Brian, if these people could talk, they would probably all say the same thing. They'd have one thing to tell us, and he'd say, "What?" He said, "What's that?" I go, "I don't know. How would I know that?" Right? like, I don't know, but it stuck with me. And so as I was trying to figure out what all stories had in common, that thing was also in the back of my mind. And one day, this is after a few years of actually actively trying to figure out if there was a golden theme, meaning a theme that was always there for every story. Like Stanislavski, the acting teacher, talked about I think it was Stanislavski, yeah, who talked about having an objective. A character has an objective. So the objective in the scene might be get this guy to lend me money or to give me money. That might be the objective in the scene. But there's a super objective, and that might be I want to get a surgery, right? That's the overall super objective, right? So I was like, there's got to be a super theme or a golden theme, something that is underneath all the stories, something unifies them. And I couldn't figure it out. And then one day, and the funny thing is, I can't explain it. And maybe I'm a little bit synesthetic because I would hear this clicking when I was thinking about it, almost like somebody writing on a chalkboard doing equations. Yeah. And it stopped. And the answer came. And I haven't heard that clicking since.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was wild. And the answer was, I literally was sitting on the couch and I went, that's it. What's at the center of every, so an armature might be some things are more important than money, or it might be, whatever. But there's something else. And that something else is we are all the same. That is at the heart of every story. That's the golden theme. That's the super theme, right? That's what's underneath everything. Because if you don't have that, then nobody can identify with what's happening, right? So it has to be human in a way that every human or most humans go, okay, I recognize that. Even if they're not that way, they've had some version of that feeling. Like, I haven't wanted to kill somebody, but I have been angry enough at people to want revenge, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, that's the golden theme. We're all the same. And when we want somebody, and the closer you get to that, the better the story ends up being. And in fact, almost sometimes even reaches a sort of magical quality where people are like, oh, there's something really amazing about that. It's like, because it gets to, well, if you look at the Shawshank Redemption, for instance, it's a bunch of dudes in prison, right?
Mhm.
A lot of guys that a lot of us couldn't identify with. And yet their humanity comes through really strong. And because their humanity comes through so strongly, you're like, wow, this is amazing. There's something almost magical about that piece, right? And the closer you get to saying we're all the same, the more sort of magic happens in a story. I can't explain it, but that's just, you're speaking to something deeper than this happens and this happens and this blows up, and you're speaking to something else. One of the things that you don't see very much, but I love it in Jaws, and it used to be all over the place, and now it doesn't exist anymore. And it makes me crazy. So in Jaws, you have a character in the sheriff who, first of all, is afraid of the water. He doesn't want to go in the water. And there's a shark out there, and he's not interested in going out there. And so that's a very human response. Most of us in real life, it's like, so there's a giant shark and I have to go get it. Most of us don't want to do that, right? And having a character who is like that makes it so human.
Yes.
I remember when I saw Independence Day, and Will Smith is like, yeah, let's go get him. And I'm like, that's an alien. You don't know what they can do. You don't know, like, you're all cool with this. Like, like it wasn't true.
Yeah.
It wasn't human. Right. And so the closer you get to what it is to be a human, the stronger the story ends up being. And so that's the golden theme. And you can hear it in the way, even people who, if you look at history at the people who are considered good people, they always espouse some version of the golden theme or practice some version of the golden theme. Or even if they didn't, that's certainly what they projected.
Mm-hmm. That
right?
makes sense.
Yeah. So they'll go, I should project unity, even if I'm doing horrible things. I should project, right? And so they make sure that the golden theme is what is put forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we see people who are closer to that as good people, and people who are further away from that as bad people. And historically, you can look at it and go, that's absolutely true.
Yeah, and you wouldn't consider like films or things that really hit you on a deep level. It's closer to that theme. Things that made you like cry when you're watching, and you're like, I don't even get why I'm crying right now, but this is making me super emotional. It's because it's hitting that close to home somewhere with you, and
Right.
to where you can understand it like that. In and of itself, that Frank Oz, Derek Delgado,
Derek Delgado,
that
yeah.
yeah, I've recommended that to someone. My girlfriend and I watch it once a year to kind of recenter ourselves, and it also gives us a good cry. So it's like one of those things,
it's
because it
amazing.
hits so well. It's so beautiful.
It really is
shocking how good it is. You don't find content like that too often anymore either. That kind of it gives you information on your own identity while also making you think of the broader spectrum of the world at the same time.
Yeah.
And that just you don't feel so alone. You kind of feel more connected to the world after that point, but it's because of that golden theme that kind of brings all of that together at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting about that is that this is something people don't understand when they are storytellers of any kind, that the more specific they get, the more they get into themselves, and the more they are willing to expose of themselves emotionally, the more the more universal it becomes. The more specific you are, the more universal it becomes. It's counterintuitive, but it's true.
Yeah.
And what everybody's afraid of is, if you write something about yourself or say something about yourself, what people are afraid of is that I will be judged. They'll see this about me. I don't want to put this down. I want to put my best foot forward, blah, 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 blah. But what happens is the opposite. When you do that, the audience doesn't see you anymore. They see themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And they often think, how do they know that about me? How did they know that I do that? How do they know I feel that way? They don't. They're just human too.
And that's beautiful too. I mean, the fact that you can be more open with your audience and not I feel like, especially in the day of social media and all this, we have so many filters on everything. We have to like manipulate videos and images no matter what you post and do. But the fact that you could write something and create something and be very raw with yourself, and it's actually going to have a bigger impact than if you try to make up a situation or falsify something or delude an emotion. That's beautiful. That means, especially in this day and age, you want to be raw and out there and express these things, because now we kind of need, tangible emotions more than ever. We need someone to scream. We need someone to feel like these feelings, and not so artificial. Let's just spit it out. This is just going to get us through the month type of thing. Like, we need something that would keep us coming back for more and more, and so we could try to understand it on a deeper level as well.
Yeah. The thing is, when you try to cover up, you try to put your best foot forward or whatever, there is an artificiality. I call it, it's a comb over.
Hmm.
And here's the thing about comb overs. Comb overs don't fool anybody. They only fool the person with the comb over.
Yeah.
The comb over person is the only person going, look, that looks like a full head of hair, right? Everybody else is like, the comb over is calling attention to the baldness.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So yeah. Patrick Stewart, somebody asked Patrick Stewart in an interview if he had ever had a comb over when he was going bald. And he said, I absolutely had a comb over. And he said, my friends, actor friends, try to talk me out of it. They're like, dude, you gotta, if you're an actor, you have to be able to expose yourself. You can't, and he said, and he wouldn't do it. And he said one day they tackled him, held him down and cut it off. And he said it was the best thing that they could have done for me.
It's freeing. Totally freeing him from that. Yeah.
Now he gets to be cool bald guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And everything. He's always selected for the cool bald guy now. That's just the ideal, like Stewart.
You need a cool bald guy. Yul Brynner's dead. You got to go to Patrick Stewart.
True.
Yeah, it is true.
Man. That's see, there's so much to that, and I think some people kind of, especially indie creators, and in not a bad way, and more of like they need awareness type of thing, but like honing in on your storytelling and really being deep and like finding that armature and not just putting together a story. I thought of a story recently and I was like, here's the whole scene, I have it mapped out, and then I looked at it, I was like, I don't know what I'm saying. Like, I wanted to start scripting because I did all the page layouts. I was just doing like, okay, this is a cool beat. This will be a good beat. After that, this will happen. This should fall into line. And then I went back to the beginning and I was like, what am I trying to say though? I'm just kind of putting stuff that will look cool. And now I'm trying to like reverse do a puzzle, which makes even less sense at that point, and it's making it harder. And then things just don't add up right at the overall outcome either.
Right. Yeah. I talk about it a lot like sculpture. So when I talked about armature and building, there's two kinds of sculpture, right? Mm-hmm. Essentially, there's additive and reductive. So additive is you start with the armature and build out. Reductive is you start with a piece of marble or a piece of wood or whatever your material is, and you carve everything away that isn't what you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem with doing that in storytelling is you have to create the block of marble, right? So you overwrite, you overcreate, and then you have to chisel everything away that's not what you want to say. The problem is, and you can work that way. Absolutely 100% you can work that way, and people do. The problem is this. You've worked hard. You've created things. You're not going to want to get rid of things that you've created. So what happens is you start keeping things that you like. So you go, yeah, I know this doesn't have anything to do with the story, but that line is hilarious. Oh, I worked so hard on it. It took me a long time to write that. I want to keep that. I really love this character. They're really funny, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to keep that. This is a really poignant line. So what happens is you start just keeping things and it throws everything off. Right? So
and it misses the point completely. It's a distraction and it takes you out more than it brings you into the story.
Right. So if you work that way, you have to be ruthless in your cutting.
And not a lot of people are.
Not a lot of people
Not very
are. They get attached, and they think it doesn't do any harm. There's a story about Rodin. It's actually in the book, The Art of Dramatic Writing. And so Rodin, this is a real story, really happened. Rodin made this sculpture of, I forget the name of the sculpture. She has a name. It's a woman in a robe. And so he did it, and he showed it to an apprentice, and the apprentice looked at it and said, "Oh, so good. This is so amazing." And those hands, they're like alive. The hands, his hands are sticking out of the robe. Went off about the hands. Rodin got frustrated and went to ask somebody else, and they looked at it and they were like, "Those hands are amazing." And that kept happening. So he cut the hands off the sculpture. The hands are not on the sculpture today. He cut them off because they were stealing focus from the rest of the piece. Right? Most people go, well, everybody likes these hands, so the hands aren't going anyplace, right? Most people will latch on, but he had a bigger thing in mind, which is, yeah, okay, the hands, and sure, they're fine, but they're not helping me do what I'm trying to do. They're not helping me tell the story I'm trying to tell, you know?
And that's the hardest part too. It could be the best thing that you think is in there. Hi, Sebastian. But sometimes it needs to be cut. Sometimes it needs to go away because it doesn't serve the whole story. And it's hard, sometimes it hurts. It hurts doing that, but save it for something else. It could be applicable for another thing. Not every idea is a bad idea. Sometimes it's just a bad idea for that certain story at that point.
Yeah. I don't do it so much anymore, but I used to have a morgue file.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So when I cut stuff, I would put it in the morgue, and I can always go get it if I need it. It's right there. I'm not losing it, and it made it much easier to throw away. And I almost never went into the morgue. but
I was going to ask, how often do you actually remember to go back into that stuff? Because you kind of grow ideas after that, or see them evolve.
Yeah. And every now and then there's a little like, oh, that was good. But most of the time I didn't go back to it, but it was a nice little place for it to live, and I could cut it easier.
There you go. So before we wrap a little bit, I know we went over a little bit. I want to talk to you about real fast the workbook and playbook for Invisible Ink. You had these. I know I have coffee, a water, and everything loaded for this. So you have the first book that actually you re-released recently, Invisible Ink. If anyone wants to know where I got the name of the show from, that's it. So, this is just like the greatest storytelling book out there right now. And I highly recommend it to everybody. And a few of my friends have actually already bought it. So hype, I got you a few sales. But the playbook and the workbook are very interesting concepts and very different. Why don't you break them down? Because, or which one would you want to talk about first, the workbook or the playbook in that sense?
Let's talk about the workbook first, I guess.
Yeah.
Although if you were to read them, I would recommend you, if you put the covers together, they all fit together, and I would read them in the order that they fit together. So I would read with Invisible Ink in the middle, workbook on one end, and then the playbook. But the playbook first, and then so the thing is, I'm not the kind of person who needs exercises. If I need them, I'll make them. I'll go, oh, I need an exercise. I'll make an exercise. So I practice this thing. But there are people who really, that's just the way they learn. And every now and then people would say, I wish there was a workbook, and it took me a while to figure out what kinds of exercises to put in the book. So when I finally figured that out, I went, oh, I can write the workbook. So when I talk about armature, it's sort of, how do you find it? How do you apply it? Things like that. And the other principles too. So it's a way of taking it out of the theoretical and sort of practice doing it. So, because it's hard, even if you have the idea, the concept, it doesn't really make it easier. Strangely, it's still
hard. Honestly, yeah.
Yeah,
it's taken me a lot of practice to try to watch a movie and be like, I gotta nail this armature, and then I have like a couple options, or you just get involved sometimes, and you're like,
Yeah.
I didn't pay attention the way I meant to.
Yeah. So it can be difficult, and so it's a way to sort of practice that. The playbook is sort of about what I noticed about. I know a lot of illustrators. I've had a lot of illustrator and animator friends in my life, and so they all had sketchbooks, especially the best ones have sketchbooks. The best artists I know draw all the time.
Yeah,
all the time. They almost never stop drawing, and or at least once upon a time. They may not do it as much as they used to, but they used to draw all the time. And so I have a friend who's at Pixar now, but I knew him back when he was in art school in the 80s, and he drew all the time, like all the time. And I remember once I said to him, I said, Derek, his name's Derek Thompson. I said, Derek, he drew a lot of figures. And I go, you never draw people in environments. You just draw figures and they're never in an environment. And the dude, like the next time I saw him a week later, he had a sketchbook full of people in environments. Right? like he just started drawing environments.
Realizing that weakness.
Yeah. That's what I've noticed the best people will do. But anyway, so they'll just go, what's my weakness? And they'll go right towards it and tackle it. And he's one of those kinds of people. So anyway, the playbook is all about taking the pressure off and letting you sketch a bit. So a lot of these things, these principles I talk about, you can observe in real life. So it's about observing those things in real life and making notes about it and jotting it down. It's sort of how to notice.
Yeah.
And there's just no pressure. You don't have to get it right. You just have to work the muscle of observation.
And see, that worked so well for me too, because I am someone that kind of needs I just need a little guidance to understand it a little bit more, and just like some more insight to make sure I really get it down. And I am someone who I love notebooks, I'm a writer. I love filling notebooks. And typically when I write a script, I will write it by hand. That way, when I type it, that's like my first draft. I'm done. And then when I type it, I'm pretty much done because I think about it. I've listened to your podcast. I was like, that's the way I write, because I kind of just play it over and over in my head until I know exactly what I got to say. I'll spit it out, and then when I retype it, it's like I'm done. That's my second final draft, pretty much.
Right.
And it's rare I kind of make edits after that, but I get very precious about notebooks. I get very precious about, even my sketchbooks that I do now. I'm very, I'm like, oh, I bought this book. I can't wait to fill it up. But you want everything in there to look amazing. And so reading that introduction where it's talking about just this is meant to be no one's supposed to see this, just have fun with it, kind of like your own personal journal, be messy, just let thoughts roll. That helps a lot with that mental block when we're just you kind of always feel like someone's watching over you, I guess, especially in this day and age where you have to put everything up and post it to actually find some validation behind it all in that sense. And now it's just oh no, this is bringing it back. Let's go back in time a little bit and not worry about stupid crap like that, and just pour your heart out into the craft. And the craft is what's important, and not all these distractions we get about it. And these books kind of help recenter our attention towards those things as well.
Oh, that's cool. I should say that, and I talk about it in the playbook, but I had a friend, his name's August Wilson. He was a playwright, and August, he was kind of famous, pretty famous guy. And so he was in a restaurant or something, and he was writing on a napkin, just writing some lines and stuff. And he goes, this server, this came up to him, and she said, why are you writing on a napkin? And he sort of didn't have an answer. And she said, is it because it doesn't count? And he said, yeah, exactly, because it doesn't count, right? Once he sat down, for real to write a play, well, then that was all about the play, right?
Yeah.
But if he could just write down notes, and I would see him almost every day, and he would always he would read the New York Times. And if something occurred to him, he would write in the margins of the New York Times. He would write, you'd say something, and he'd go, that was good. He'd write down, right in the New York Times. But he would always... He kept a lot of notes, but he didn't write them any place official, so that nothing was carved in stone. And so that's kind of freeing too. If this doesn't count. I can write this and it doesn't count. But when you sit down to really write something, we freeze because we think it matters. And so sometimes you have to find out what psychological tricks you need to play on yourself, right? Neil Simon, most successful playwright of the 20th century, Neil Simon said that he would stop writing in the middle of a scene for the day.
Ouch.
So that when he came back, he could just start. That he didn't have to start cold. He had a head start. Because if he had to start cold, it's like, well, now how do I tackle this scene and blah, 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 blah. So in order to get the gears rolling, he would just stop in the middle of the scene and go home and then come back the next day and continue.
I mean, that's fun too, because you kind of like, especially when you solidify a scene, you're kind of done with it and then you're moving on. And so when you pick up in the middle of it, you actually have that steam to like, oh, but this can carry through. I'm not starting from zero. That's smart. I got to steal that trick for some stuff for sure.
Yeah, sure.
We always kind of write to get to that or get to the end of the page or something, finish this part, and that's a wrap. Interesting. Very interesting. Well, dude, I will wrap up a little bit here. I mean, I could talk to you for hours, Brian, and just get tons of insight. But I selfishly kept you a few minutes longer than usual.
That's all right.
So, do you have anything else that you're working on right now that you want to promote? Any other recommendations for people to check out in general?
No, I mean, I would say that if they felt like they got anything, that they should check out the books. They should definitely find the Story First podcast, which will have the archive of the old shows, a lot of them. And then, I have a memoir coming out, a graphic memoir, but I don't know when that's coming out. So I can't, just don't hold your breath, but it'll come out. It's just been a long time in the making. It takes a long time to draw a graphic novel. And, so
I'm excited to hear it's graphic too. That's really exciting.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm very proud of that book. So I can't wait for people to see it. But again, don't hold your breath. But I'll let everybody know. Everybody will know when it's out. And I have nothing to promote at the moment except myself. But I really appreciate this conversation, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I hope your fan base got something.
No, definitely. This was a great, episode for Inspired Inc. And I think all of our creators will appreciate the insight, and hopefully it gets you a bunch of attention as well, because I think comic creators, indie creators, students, we're all students when we start entering comics. There's so much to the craft and there's so much to take on. But when you start understanding storytelling, the way you've spoken about it, the way you've written about it, it makes writing those scripts and drawing those pages a lot easier. And it kind of takes a lot of the pressure off, and it makes, watching shows and, curating your diet of what you intake to inspire you a lot better. So I think it's really, I mean, for me personally, it's totally shaped me from the comics I've written, the anthologies I've put together, to just, future upcoming projects, and to running Apollo City Comics, my little publishing imprint. It really all came from a lot of your insight, and reading books like, we didn't get to talk a lot about it, but Land of the Dead, and which is beautiful too. Amazing.
Okay. The art in that he did such a good job in that.
Top tier, man. Toby's phenomenal. I wasn't really aware of him until I got this book, and then did a deep dive on some of his other stuff too, which is he's just a great, visual storyteller.
He's really good. You should have him on the show.
Yeah, I got to get it in contact. Maybe you can link us up. That'd be great.
I can link you up.
But dude, thank you for everything, man. This is great. This is the interview of the year for me, so I really appreciate your time on it. And hopefully we get you back on and to talk more about just craft, since we gave a lot of background today as well. And maybe we'll do a focused episode or something.
Anytime.
Love it. Thank you so much, Brian. And to our audience, don't forget, we have the print shop tomorrow, Tuesday, with, of course, Dan Hills, our CEO, and Chris, our marketing manager, where we're giving you some new updates on print on demand. And then Thursday night, Spilled Ink. We got a packed house this entire month, full of great artists joining us to draw. And I'm wrapping up this new little zine, so really excited. We'll be back with Inspired Inc. next week with Jesse Lonergan. Super excited about that show as well. He's a great artist. But for today, thank you all for hanging. And Brian, thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Enjoy.